All right, here we go.
Good afternoon, everyone. How are you doing today?
Good.
Good.
Good to see you.
Well, this meeting, February 28th, 2023, the CRTPA has been called to order. I think the next step is to do roll call. Is that correct, Mr. Slay?
Yes, sir.
Ready?
Yes, ma'am.
Ready? Okay. Commissioner O'Keefe.
Present.
Okay, I started in the middle of the list. Commissioner Messersmith. Here. Commissioner O'Keefe.
Here.
Commissioner Maddox.
Here.
Commissioner Minor.
Here.
Commissioner Richardson.
Here.
Commissioner Williams-Cox.
Here.
And that is everyone.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Before we begin the rest of the meeting, I'd like to go ahead and entertain a motion to allow Commissioner Williams-Cox to participate virtually.
So move, Mr. Chair.
Second.
All right, motions are made and seconded. Any objection? Seeing no objection. Commissioner Williams-Cox, welcome. All right.
Thank you.
Mr. Slay, any modifications to the agenda?
No, sir.
All right, seeing none, we'll move on to public comment on items not appearing on the agenda. Any comments, sir?
Yes, sir. No cards
Okay.
submitted.
Move on to consent agenda.
Move consent.
Second.
Motion's been made to move consent agenda, seconded by Commissioner Richardson. Any objection? All right, seeing none, we'll move on. Next order of business is CRTPA action. We've got the single item under this category is the CRTPA safety targets. Mr. Slay.
Yes, sir. Chairman, just real quick, as you all recall, this is something we started doing in 2018. Came out of the previous federal transportation legislation requiring each MPO to adopt safety targets by February of each year, and that's actually the primary reason for our meeting today. If it wasn't for this, we probably would not have had a meeting. But when the feds say you have to adopt something, you try to get that done. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Burke, who's managing this for us.
Good afternoon, members. As Mr. Slade just said, every year we are actually required to adopt safety targets for the CRTPA region. What this is actually safety targets for 5 performance measures. Those are number of fatalities, number of serious injuries, their corresponding rates, and the number of non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries. Now, initially, when we first started doing this, we actually utilized data from FDOT 5-year average data, which you can see up there. However, most recently in last year, 2022, we actually revised how we do that. What we did is actually adopted targets for that year using the previous year, 2021, as a baseline with the addition of a reduction factor, specifically 5%. Additionally, we adopted a long-term safety goal of 0 fatalities and 0 serious injuries for the CRTPA region, and that is actually consistent with the FDOT Target Zero effort. Now, in terms of today, again, we actually have to adopt the targets for this year for 2023. What we have done is taken board direction from last year. So we've taken the most recent adopted targets and applied that 5% reduction factor. We are also proposing to include a long-term safety goal of 0 fatalities and serious injuries for the CRTPA region, with this year the proposed addition of an achievement of that goal by the year 2040. This is what that would ultimately look like.
Greg, if I could interject real quick. If you recall, we're working on the Safe Streets for All program. That was one of the things that came out of the last federal bill. We're putting together that action plan, and that was actually one of the requirements of that plan was this body had to adopt a date-specific horizon to try to get to 0.
Great. Now, in terms of historic trends and evaluation.
Mr. Burke, if you'll hold on one second, please.
I'm sorry.
Mr. Richardson.
You know, I understand that in an ideal world, we would try to achieve 0, but is 0 really realistic? I mean, I don't think whatever we do, there's still going to be.
Yes, sir. And that was always, I know, that was my opinion when this first started. I mean,
Yeah.
It's an admirable goal. It was interesting, if you recall at the time, that was some of the direction or the advice that we got from Federal Highway was not to adopt what they called aspirational goals.
Right.
And visions. for the state, there is, and I don't like to use the word penalties for not achieving it, but basically, if DOT doesn't meet their target zero, they're required to put more of their money towards safety. And the reason I say it's not a penalty, I don't think that's penalizing somebody.
Right.
Spend more on safety. That does not extend down to MPOs because simply we don't have the ability or the funding levels to direct safety like that. But I don't disagree as long as
Okay.
folks are driving automobiles, when we talk about it,
Of course.
98% of the crashes that you see are caused by human error on
Yeah.
one side or the other. But again, it's a requirement, so that's what we've done.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And Commissioner Richardson, I remember from previous years when we've done this, I think we were all obviously not comfortable with the idea of like having a target of 52 fatalities for the coming year, right? It doesn't sit well with us.
Yeah.
But I think this long-term goal of zero fatalities, zero crashes, was a way to kind of convey the fact that we don't think 52 fatalities in a year is acceptable.
Yeah.
But that long-term goal of zero is what we're aspiring to, so.
Yeah.
And that's one thing too, if I could add, and we've talked about this a lot at the staff level, we tried to get away from using the word target because it sounds like, this is what we're targeting, but basically, it's a projection based on past experience. We've tried to minimize the use of the word target, but again, unfortunately, that's how it's worded in federal legislation.
Okay. All
Anything
right.
else, Commissioner Richardson?
That's it.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Great. Now, the annual adoption of safety targets actually provides the CRTPA region an opportunity to assess how we are actually doing with regards to what did we adopt and how did we actually do with regards to that. Now, with regards to the FDOT data that we receive annually, the most recent date for that is 2021. So what we've done right there, you can see in that table, we included what we adopted in 2021 and what was most recently reported by the FDOT. And what you can actually see is that the CRTPA achieved one of its 5 adopted targets. Specifically, the number of non-motorized facilities and serious injuries, fatalities, actually were the ones that we did achieve for 2021. Now, looking at long-term trends with regards to serious injuries and fatalities, again, this is using FDOT data, so that goes up to 2021. Serious injuries in the CRTPA region have generally been decreasing. However, most recent data, again in 2021, show that they increased 35% from the preceding year. With regards to fatalities in 2021, there were 668, which was a 21% increase from the preceding year.
Quick and go back to your point, if you look back at 2012, we had 72 fatalities. Next year, it went down by almost half. That's the trend that we typically see in fatalities is they tend to be random. They're not in we generally don't see concentrations of them in a certain area. And if you notice too, it's interesting, this kind of tracked consistently. If you look at the serious injury crashes from 2020, they dropped off substantially, but that was kind of the height of the pandemic. So traffic volumes were a lot less, and they jumped right back up to that, actually a little bit higher than the normal range for 2021. So probably 20 and 21 by themselves are going to be kind of oddball years because of everything that's going on in the transition through the pandemic back to whatever regular life becomes.
Now, as we just mentioned, FDOT data most recent is for 2021. However, with the use of Signal 4 analytics, we can actually get more recent data for 2022. And what we've done is use that data for fatalities. And what that data has shown is that in 2022, there were 61 fatalities in the CRTPA region, again, the 4-county area. With regards to contributing factors for those incidents, lane departures, 39 were the most frequent, followed by impaired driving. We actually also did the same thing for serious injuries in the CRTPA region for 2022. There were 223 serious injuries in the region. Lane departures, again, were the #1 contributing factor in those incidents, followed by intersections and seatbelt use.
And Greg, just to so we're all clear, one incident can have multiple factors.
Exactly. Yes, yeah. So, yeah, one incident can touch a whole range of different issues that are contributing factors.
Greg, stepping back to the fatalities, can you explain it looks like these 61 are all motor vehicle fatalities. They don't include the non-motorized?
Actually, they do.
Okay.
They do include that, yeah.
And so the 13 pedestrian and bicycles, would those encompass only where there's a fatality of pedestrian or bicycle, or where something with pedestrian or bicycle could have led to a fatality in a vehicle?
It would encompass how it's identified on the crash reports.
Gotcha.
On there, yeah.
Generally going to be the pedestrian or the
Okay, thank you.
Now, with regards to long-term trends for bicycle and pedestrian serious injuries and fatalities, again, this is the most recent data we have from FDOT. And as you can see from that measure, that actually combines pedestrian and bicycle serious injuries as well as fatalities in there. But what this long-term data shows is that there was a high of such incidents in 2008. Most recent data from FDOT shows a slight increase in 2021 to 39 versus the preceding year of 38 in 2020. Once again, however, we can update this data to 2022 through use of Signal 4 analytics and break out that both by mode, meaning separate them by bicycle fatalities as well as pedestrian fatalities. And what that shows is that bike fatalities in 2022 actually decreased from 2021, which were 4. Pedestrian fatalities, however, as you can see, increased 57% from the preceding year.
as part of the Safe Streets for All, we're seeing some trends on the pedestrian side, especially with homelessness or homeless, up on 27 North Monroe, Pensacola Street. So that's part of some of the conversations we've been having with law enforcement about, how to potentially deal with some of those. And there's a correlation between a lot of these pedestrian fatalities and known homeless camps, things like that. So that is something we've been having some conversations with law enforcement.
Thank you.
Now, similarly, for pedestrian bicycle serious injuries, we have updated that data to 2022 through Signal 4 analytics. For pedestrian serious injuries, last year in 2022, those actually increased 37% from last year. Bicycle serious injuries actually decreased somewhat, as you can see there. Now, getting to the broader issue of how is the CRTPA actually addressing safety within the region, we do that through the development of plans, projects, programs, incorporation of safety in all of our transportation projects that we're pursuing and that get funded, as well as coordination with our partner agencies. An example of that is funding initiatives that the CRTPA is going after. Currently, there's a safety action plan, as you all are aware, that's under development. Jack Struwe here is actually managing that project. We are scheduled to adopt that, I believe, in the spring of this year. And what the purpose of that is to actually position our local government members within the 4-county CRTPA area to actually go forward with actually applying for funding for projects that will enhance safety within the region and specifically their local government region. The CRTPA recently applied for a Reconnecting Communities pilot project for Tharp Street. As you all know, we spoke about that in January at the board retreat. Unfortunately, we just found out today that the CRTPA, within the last hour, was not selected for that funding program, and we were looking actually for PDE funds for Tharp Street, which is such a needed project, as you can see from those photos. However, we are not discouraged, and we will definitely reapply for this Reconnecting Communities grant in the future. Corridor safety projects include a Pensacola Street improvements that are scheduled to actually be constructed in fiscal year 25. Those include updated lighting and, as well as replacing existing left turn signal heads and restriping crosswalks to high emphasis areas along that corridor. Additionally, Monroe Street from John Knox north to Lakeshore Road, as you know, on the west side, there are missing sidewalks, very well documented need for those sidewalks. That's a project the CRTPA has been pursuing for a number of years. The most recent work program showed that actually through CRTPA urban attributable or SU funds, almost $5 million was put on that project for the most recent, for the last phase of that, the construction phase, and that is to actually occur in fiscal year 25. So we're excited about that much-needed project. That picture there kind of shows the west side of Monroe Street with a bike, with a bus shelter there, and you can see that there's just pedestrian paths and there's literally no sidewalk. Not a great situation for such an important corridor. Resurfacings are another example of how the CRTPA can get additional safety issues addressed. What you see there are within Leon, Jefferson, and Gadsden County, some recent projects that we have provided comments for upcoming resurfacing projects to incorporate some missing sidewalk pieces to enhance pedestrian and bicycle safety, to kind of get those, see if the district, FDOT District 3 can actually incorporate some additional safety improvements on that will go hand in hand along with the resurfacing of those segments. Expanding the multi-use trail system within the CRTPA region. Obviously, what that does is provide safe corridors and opportunities for recreation, as well as folks that use those actually to commute and things like that throughout the CRTPA region. And so the CRTPA for a number of years has been actively pursuing studies to get our multi-use trail system expanded. Most recently in November, you all approved the Tallahassee to Havana feasibility study. The US 90 multi-use trail feasibility study was approved in May of last year. Status of that, you all are aware, and we're told about that at the retreat in January. We actually received PD&E, Project Development Environment funding for the Leon County portion of that project. I believe in the next couple months or so of your meetings, you're going to get an update for the State Road 267 Loxham cutoff feasibility study that we are going forward with and we'll be presenting to you. Additionally, in Wakulla County as well, there's an extension, eastern extension of the US 98 Coastal Trail with construction funded in fiscal year 24, which will take that trail, actually Lighthouse Road, to the St. Mark's Wildlife Refuge, an important connection there. The CRTPA TA, or Transportation Alternatives Program, this is a program that we coordinate. The CRTPA annually, we coordinate this, and we actually solicit applications from our partners. Most recently in Wakulla County, in the new draft work program, funding was received for the construction of a multi-use trail on Dr. MLK Jr. Memorial Road there, and that is scheduled to be constructed in fiscal year 26. A couple other projects include Quincy, include sidewalk extensions, construction. So that program is actually, which is focused on alternative transportation, specifically multi-use trails, a lot of sidewalk enhancements, needed sidewalks, and that's been a good one to enhance pedestrian safety and cyclist safety in the CRTPA region as well. Leon County High Visibility Enforcement Initiative. This is something the Tallahassee Police Department is currently undergoing, continuing those efforts on corridors within the Tallahassee area that have been shown to have high crash rates for pedestrians as well as cyclists. There you see where those initiatives are being conducted. And these efforts are to continue with up until May of 2023. CTST, Community Traffic Safety Team. So every county within the CRTPA region has a CTST, and these are actually focused on providing a forum for officials to come together to actually discuss issues of safety, bring forward items. Those include law enforcement community, local government members involved in planning and transportation issues. Last year, we actually, associated with this program, did a helmet fitting that happened in February, a year ago of 2022. Suzanne Lex, who's been with the CRTPA, has been quite a good staff member with initiating and reinvigorating some of the CTSTs within the 4-county area. She has actually been active in rescheduling a helmet fitting that's coming up in March of this year as well. And information about that has gone out and will go out for folks that are interested in fitting helmets at events throughout the CRTPA. Now, kind of circling back to today and why we're here and why we do this every year. Again, we're required to adopt these safety targets every year for the CRTPA region. Again, we used last year's methodology, board-approved methodology for how you all like to do this with a 5% annual reduction. We are proposing also in keeping the long-term safety goal, and again, with the addition of achievement of that goal to 2040. That said, that is it for my presentation with more pictures of Sharp Street on there and the need for some safety improvements. And I'm open to any questions or comments you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Burke. Any questions? Is there a motion?
To accept it? I'll make the motion to accept it.
Second.
Madam Vice Chair, thank you, Commissioner O'Keefe. Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Aye.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Williams-Cox. Motion carries. Next order of business is Florida Department of Transportation report. Ms. Donna.
Outside of the flyer that packet. Report, sorry. In your packet, you have the flyer for the US 90 Hybrid Public Information Meeting that will take place on April the 4th. And that is all that we have to report today.
Great. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Slay, Executive Director's report.
Yes, sir. I've got a few things today. Shouldn't take too long. First up, we got our initial pass on our urbanized area population data about the middle to end of January. Greg?
It's the other slide, correct?
Yeah.
It's the population.
I'll come back to this one in a second, but I need the,
There you go.
So this, for 2020, our urbanized area population was 250,000, right at 250,000. That represents about a 5.3% increase from 2010. It's interesting, you know, over the past, I guess, 2 or 3 decades, the increase has actually been declining to a certain. And for those of you to recall, because it's been probably 10 years since we talked about this, if you could flip back over. Slide it back to the left. Thank you, sir. This represented our urbanized area in 2010. As you can see, it encompasses pretty much, you know, Tallahassee up into the Florence, up Ox Bottom, that area to the north. Also, Quincy, Crawfordville, and Woodville were identified as what were called urban clusters at the time. The Census Bureau has actually kind of reworked that now. They've eliminated that. So in essence, any area with over a 5,000 population meeting certain density requirements is just called an urban area. Where the urbanized area comes into play is that's actually the area that the CRTPA is based on in federal law, is that urbanized area. We'll still have to go through and do some work. And I apologize. If you don't mind, slide it back over. That was a 2010. The purple, in essence, represents the overlap. Mind zooming that in some? Can you zoom that in a little bit? The kind of salmon-colored, I guess, areas we would call that, those are the new areas for 2020, excuse me. We'll have to go back and do some work on what's called developing a smooth urbanized area, kind of smoothing that area out. That'll play back into our functional classification and things like that. But the primary driver for this, of course, is funding for Star Metro. Some of our transit programs are funding that we get as CRTPAs based on this urbanized area population. We'll have to come back and look at our apportionment plan, our voting membership, things like that. I would not anticipate any changes to that at this point. It's still pretty similar to what it was in 2010. But we've got, I think, about 18 months once this all is established to develop all those new maps, apportionment plans, and things like that. So we'll be coming back to you over the course of the next few months with varying pieces. Questions?
Any questions? All right, Mr. Slade, anything else on the report?
Yep, a couple more things. A couple of items. Spoke last week with Heather Cohen regarding DOT's rail study update, and she's agreed to come and make a presentation to your April meeting about the status on that and some of the information. I know, Commissioner Williams-Cox, you've had some questions on that as it relates, and you've gotten some questions from the public on that as well. So hopefully we get a good update that, and really nothing's changed on the information that I gave you back in January. The department's position is still, they're supportive of restoring the Sunset Limited as long as it doesn't require any state operating assistance. I think their focus, talking to Holly, is more so on some of the systems in South Florida where there's greater population density, but she did agree to come and give us an update and kind of talk through that subject. Well, real quickly, the Fort Braden.
Thank you.
You're welcome. On the Fort Braden lighting out at Fort Braden Middle School, we've been working a little bit with the county and with DOT. DOT is actually doing a study looking at the lighting on State Road 20 from Capitol Circle, a certain distance to the west, not all the way out to Fort Braden. But when I spoke to Mike Lewis yesterday, he said they could possibly include the Fort Braden area in as part of that review that they're doing. So I'm waiting to confirm that with Mike. And then I believe Mr. Maddox said they've gotten some clearances from DOT for the county possibly putting some lighting. So just to let you know, that's all still being worked on. Helps 3 different ways. As Greg mentioned, unfortunately, as we found out about an hour ago, we were not successful on the Reconnecting Communities grant for Tharp Street. But we've had some conversation with Blueprint since the retreat. I think you'll all be getting a more thorough update on this at your Blueprint meeting, I believe, next month. Blueprint's going to take the lead on looking at some interim improvements along the corridor. We had talked about the CRTP actually possibly doing that, but Blueprint seems they have a little bit of funding put towards some improvements, so we felt it's much better to have them take the lead on it. They'll probably get some stuff. And Mr. Chairman, that's all I have.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Slay. Anything on number 9, CRTP information?
No, sir. Real quickly, I'm about 95% sure we will cancel your March meeting. I always like to hold out just in case something comes up unexpected, but at this point, not that sure we'll be canceling it.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Items from CRTPA board members. Commissioner Williams-Cox, anything on your end?
I'm all good. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, ma'am. Anything else from the members that are present here?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Maddox.
Would you allow the record to show I voted in the affirmative on the previous vote for the
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
safety, safety targets? And Mr. Slay, you spoke about that FDOT and Leon County thing. Make sure you contact the administrator and y'all coordinate on that.
Yes, sir.
With this. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Maddox. Anyone else?
And I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I did have one other thing I forgot. Okay. All right. Well,
No, sorry. Go ahead.
just real quickly, in your informational items, you'll see a memo related to the local billing. That is all of our member government share of the what the federal funds do not cover for the CRTPA. When actually during the pandemic, we'd put that on hold, figuring that out. But that's actually, or in essence, that's each local government's portion of that non-federal portion. That actually, we anticipate that to drop off substantially, probably down to about $9,000 a year. The main reason for that is one of our FTA grants, our 5305, they've eliminated the local match requirement. So we think those numbers will be substantially lower, actually starting this year. I just want to give you all a heads up that you may get a question as to why your member governments are getting a bill from the CRTPA, so that'll be.
Okay. And again, this is just information only, doesn't require a motion
No,
for us
sir.
to accept.
Just information.
All right. Anything else? For the good of the order? Yes,
Excuse
Commissioner
me.
Richardson.
I understand that, Greg, we will be getting information back at our next meeting or an upcoming meeting on the improvements to the intersection of Ox Bottom and Velderdary.
Yes, sir. That's something that the City of Tallahassee actually take a look at.
Yeah.
DOT apparently has funding they can put towards this, but they asked that it be prioritized as part of our transportation system management priority list that we do. So more than likely, you would see that in May.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner Williams-Cox, did you have another comment, ma'am?
No, I did not.
Okay. All right. All right, well, that concludes our business. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a good afternoon.
Good job, Mr. Chair.